Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Yesterday morning, Joe Biden's Secretary of State, a man called Tony Blinken, went on to the Sunday show over at CBS News to announce a new policy toward Russia. Going forward, Blinken explained, the Biden administration will use Poland as a cutout to send fighter jets to the government of Ukraine. Those jets will be used to fight the Russian military. Blinken announced this in a calm, even tone that suggested this was conventional procedure, business as usual, nothing to worry about. Just another weekend at the State Department. But in fact, it's not typical. It's a very big step. It could turn out to be a pivot point in history. And for that reason, we want to show you the entire exchange. Here it is.
If, for instance, the Polish government, a NATO member, wants to send fighter jets, does that get a green light from the U.S., or are you afraid that that will escalate tension?
No, that gets a green light. In fact, we're talking with our Polish friends right now about what we might be able to do to backfill their needs if, in fact, they choose to provide these fighter jets to the Ukrainians. What could we do? How can we help to make sure that they get something to backfill the planes that they're handing over to the Ukrainians?
Are you afraid that will escalate tension, asks the script reader, because even a CBS News anchor knows that sending fighter jets to a war usually does that. No, replies Tony Blinken, that gets a green light. It's a remarkable exchange. What are we watching here, apart from a conversation between two incredibly shallow people who have limited contact with reality? What we're watching is the beginning of a war between the United States and Russia. If that sounds jarring, what else would you call it? Now, you may support everything that Tony Blinken just said. Maybe you do support it. But let's not lie about what's happening. Let's be as honest and clear-eyed as we can be, especially now, because it matters. The Biden administration just inserted itself with force into the middle of a hot war between two foreign powers. That means the United States is now an active participant in a war. We are at war with Russia. Whether or not that war has been officially declared, whether or not Congress has authorized that war, all of that is irrelevant. That war is happening right now as we watch. Why is no one in Washington saying anything about this? Because they support it. They always have. Almost 5 years ago, way back in 2017, Congressman Eric Swalwell of California came on this show for another Russiagate debate, one of many. He came to let us know how Vladimir Putin had gotten Donald Trump elected president. It was all as stupid as you remember it, until the end of the interview, when Swalwell said something odd and interesting. Swalwell explained that because Putin had installed Donald Trump secretly in the White House, the United States should now, quote, do everything we can to expand NATO's role. In other words, we should let Ukraine join NATO. That's odd. Why would he say that? Why would a policy so seemingly obscure, NATO, Ukraine, what? Why would that be a priority for some forgettable congressman from the East Bay? Well, simple. Because getting Ukraine to join NATO was the key to inciting war with Russia. We didn't get it at the time. Now it's obvious. Vladimir Putin just invaded Ukraine because he didn't want Ukraine to join NATO. Putin certainly had other motives as well. People always do have multiple motives. But that's the main reason Russia invaded. The Russians don't want American missiles on their border. They don't want a hostile government next door. Now, that's true, whether you're allowed to say it in public right now or not. It has been true for a long time. A lot has been written about this over many years by serious people. No one who knows anything and is honest will tell you Putin invaded Ukraine simply because he is evil. Putin may be evil, he certainly seems to be, but he also had strategic motives in doing that. Whether or not you agree with those motives, that's irrelevant. Those are the facts. So with those facts in mind, the Biden administration's behavior in the days before the Ukraine invasion tells you a lot about what motivated them. With Russian troops massed by the thousands on the Ukrainian border, Joe Biden sent Kamala Harris, the least capable diplomat in Washington, to explain America's policy to European heads of state. At a public press event at the Munich Security Conference, Kamala Harris encouraged Ukraine to become a member of NATO. Quote, I appreciate and admire President Zelensky's desire to join NATO. Message? Up yours, Vladimir Putin. Go ahead and invade Ukraine. And of course, Vladimir Putin did that just days later. So the invasion was no surprise to the Biden administration. They knew that would happen. That was the point of the exercise. We watched all this happen. We missed it. How? Honestly, because it was insane and therefore very hard to take seriously. Why in the world would the United States intentionally seek war with Russia? How could we possibly benefit from that war? We still don't know the answer to that question, but it is obvious that permanent Washington has been fixated on war with Russia for a very long time. A couple of years ago, you may remember, we'd forgotten, they impeached a sitting president. Why? For threatening to withhold military aid to President Zelensky of Ukraine. Failing to back a proxy war in Ukraine was the one thing Donald Trump was not allowed to do as president. Again, they impeached him for it. And no one said much about it, even in his own party, because of course they supported war with Russia too. Maybe even more than the Democrats did. As far back as 2016, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, hysterical little Lindsey Graham, was jumping around, acting out his war fantasies in front of foreign soldiers in Ukraine. If we saw this tape at the time, we don't remember seeing it. Back in 2016, Ukraine seemed like a faraway place. We should have paid more attention. Here it is.
Your fight is our fight.
Ваша боротьба – це наша боротьба.
2017 will be the year of offense.
Рік 2017 рік буде ріком нападу.
All of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia.
Ми всі повернемося до Вашингтону і ми будемо відстоювати санкції проти Росії.
Enough of a Russian aggression.
Досить вже російської агресії.
It is time for them to pay a heavier price.
Your fight is our fight? That's a very strange thing for an American lawmaker to say to a foreign military. Why would the Ukrainian government's fight in 2016 possibly be our fight? On what grounds is it our fight? What does that even mean? We don't know. And yet now it is demonstrably true. Ukraine's fight is our fight. Ukraine's war is our war. It's here, but most Americans did not see that coming. Yet permanent Washington certainly did. Permanent Washington understood that the second Vladimir Putin's forces rolled across the border into Ukraine, we would inevitably be on a course toward war with Russia. They knew. Here's the president of the August Council on Foreign Relations on the day of the invasion.
We need now a response of necessity to his war of choice. And there's got to be to raise the economic costs at home, to raise the military costs on the ground. I hate to be so blunt, but the most vulnerable thing that Putin's vulnerable to is dead Russian soldiers. So we have to make sure Ukraine has the means to resist.